Converted one of the abandoned wings for you and your team.
My team?
GI robot, reporting for service, ma'am.
Look at dumb hair go.
Well, you in?
What else I gotta do?
Welcome back to another Creature Commandos breakdown. We are back with episode 7, the final episode of season 1. And thank God we're getting a season 2 because this series was awesome. I had a lot of fun with it, and I just really like the characters, even though a bunch of them died during it. And I can't wait to see what they do with the season 2, especially with what they set up at the end. Plus, there's a couple other things that kind of made the DCU get questioned a little bit, specifically with Clayface, and we'll talk about that as well during this video. But first off, we're going to talk about Nina's backstory, then go into the other stuff that happened during this episode. Because Nina's backstory was yet another devastating backstory. The fact that she was a child born with her lungs outside her body. She wasn't expected to live until her father built a device to keep her breathing because of the fluids in her lungs that were outside her body. Which was very, sad. You just see this little baby wearing a little device, and you kind of wonder if that's the proper kind of life this child should have, which is the same thing her mother thought. Where her mother was devastated by it. She didn't want her to be alive, which is sad, right? You don't want to see someone struggling, and you see him, her father was so obsessed that he didn't want anything to happen to her, so his actions caused her to be turned into a monster by putting amphibious DNA in her in order for her to breathe, not thinking that it would turn her into this fish person, but instead he was hoping that she could breathe with the liquid in her lungs, which is definitely a change from the comics as well, because in the comics, she was actually an adult when she got turned into her monstrous form, where she did it to herself after creating the second generation of Creature Commandos. Because she was able to turn these fully formed humans into creatures that were able to do transformations, she did it to herself, joining the team.
In Nina's original first appearance, she actually appeared during Flashpoint, and in that comic, she was born in a remote village in Romania inhabited by monsters of different types of werewolves, vampires, and swamp people, where Dr. Myron Mizursky brought home a young amphibian girl without a family and then raised her to be his own. So in that version, she was already a kid as an amphibian person compared to the post-crisis timeline where she was a scientist who turned herself into the amphibian person she is today. Where now in this, she was actually a child and it was done to her in order to make her survive. But this is so sad because now you have this girl. She looks like a alien, a monster. She doesn't look human, and then her father throws her into a high school. That's going to lead into very deep consequences because children are terrible people, especially in high school when it just is consistent of bullying if you look different, which is exactly what she went through. And it was just really bad to watch this really nice, innocent person go through school, pretty much get called a frog, have her get told that she has to say ribbit, and all she wanted to do was belong. So in the end, she ran away from home and started living in the sewers and the wild so that she could be herself, that she didn't have to pretty much hide who she was and live in this constant torment. And you really start to feel for this character. It felt really bad, and especially where it led to by this episode. I'm like, wow, they're really making us feel for this character just for them to kill her off. It was very devastating. However, with all the backstories, I think Weasel's was the one that was pretty much the most effective for me anyways, because he was framed, and justice for Weasel. But Nina did not deserve what she got. She was just trying to live her life, got caught by a photographer in Star City, which in Star City is where Green Arrow is from, so there's a possibility that Green Arrow was around at this time. And then she was thrown in jail. She literally did nothing wrong. Nothing at all. She was just peaceful, eating a fish, got seen as a monster, and they took her and captured her and put her away. Which, compared to the other monsters, she was so innocent, and she did not deserve to get thrown in jail. And they had a couple references during this scene too, where they had animal control experts from Metropolis and Bloodhaven, where of course Metropolis is where Superman's from, and Bloodhaven would be where Nightwing is from. However, looking at her age around that time, maybe Nightwing might have not been in the area yet, because he might have still been a little bit younger. However, we don't know the exact ages of the characters, and they didn't tell us an exact timeline, so it's all up to speculation. Now, I didn't understand why the cop shot her dad when her dad went to go see her. He wasn't attacking anyone. He did push the one cop to the ground, but he was just trying to talk to Nina. And he wasn't trying to attack her. He wasn't attacking anyone else. He was literally having a conversation with her, saying he cared about her, everything else, and then the cop just shot him. I was just like, are you kidding me? He did nothing wrong. Just showing that, sometimes cops do the dumbest shit ever, especially in TV shows and in the DC universe, and that happened again. But just wanted to add to her devastating backstory. Again, another thing to make us really feel for this character, feel bad for her, and, realizing that she should not be on the Creature Commandos. She wasn't a monster doing anything terrible. She shouldn't have been thrown in a life or death situation. but instead, she was kind of forced to be put onto it. Of course, with this jumping back and forth between the Creature Commandos infiltrating the castle,
and her backstory, they really try to push more and more on her character, and that she wasn't really meant to do this assassination. But we'll talk about that in a second, because let's catch up first, because we gotta talk about everything that led up to her being the one that was supposed to take out the princess. Like, first of all, we have Frankenstein going to find the bride. That's all he cares about, and of course, he's just talking about her looks. He's not caring about who she is as a person, nothing else. He just cares about her looks. Just what we learned from it so far. And honestly, I was not expecting him to have this very, very short part of the episode, because in the end, all he did was get to the castle, see the bride and them breaking in, and then get absolutely shot up by the bride by getting called a stalker, a creep, and then she just leaves him. But he's still obsessed with her, everything else, but just leaves him. I mean, that's all we see from him for the rest of the episode. And I totally thought Frankenstein would have a bigger part for the final, mostly because of how they were setting him up. Someone that was chasing after the bride, going after her, and eventually I thought they were going to have more of a confrontation rather than her just shooting him and then leaving him for dead. Now, the thing is here is, because of season 2, they're definitely just setting him up to be like this reoccurring character that's chasing the bride, which I'm hoping he gets more character development to really teach him not to be this shitty and realize the bride is a person rather than just being something he lusts after. But I'm assuming we'll see that in season 2, or at least at another point, because right now it kind of feels like he was put in the season for nothing other than a comedic joke, but I feel like something's coming from him. James Gunn does throw characters in these kind of situations, but eventually they build up to a bigger story. So we'll definitely see in the future what his role is, because by the end of the episode, there was a post-credit scene with him, again, talking about the bride, how she's obsessed with him, and because of her attacking him, she just overreacted. She can't deal with the love she has for him. I feel like he's just gonna get healed up with the woman that follows him in that cabin we saw in the first episode, and then we'll see him again in season 2. But with the Creature Commandos infiltrating this castle, we definitely get a bunch of really big moments. Like Nina questioning why they're killing the princess. Like, is this even the right thing to do? Like, should we be doing it? And I feel like, of course, it's just showing that Nina is the heart of the group. She's not a killer. Again, she was thrown in jail for no reason. So she's questioning, should they really be killing this girl? And I really like how they put it as Nina's more of that human side of the group. She doesn't want to do this. She thinks there might be another way, which is more of the right way to think. But then eventually she gets convinced to be the one to kill the princess because she's the only one that could do it. Because the princess is swimming in water, that's her domain, and it makes sense for her to be the one to do it, even though she's not a murderer. They kept pushing to show that she was just an innocent person on all of this, and they were really showing how the other Creature Commandos were being more of this like influence to push her to do it. They were peer pressuring her. You know, her friend, the bride, the one that she cares about, was getting her to do it. And you can tell by the end of the episode, the bride regretted her actions. She lost the only friend she had. It really hurt to see both characters be put through this. But while they're infiltrating and they're questioning all this, they do see this moment of the princess with Clayface of all people next to her in a surveillance footage, showing her that she was the one controlling Clayface. Clayface was working for her, not Cersei, not Waller. It was the princess, which means she sent Clayface to be Dr. McPherson. She's the one that sent him to do all the dirty work, and she's the one that used Clayface to take out Rick Flag. Because she knew about McPherson knowing about the Amazon history and how she would know that Cersei would be telling the truth, all because she had one of her knights watching them when they were back at Belle Reve. So she manipulated it to trick them until he got fried by Frankenstein, but they definitely set all that up to show that Clayface was working with the princess all along. Now, speaking of Clayface, we have Rick Flag telling Amanda Waller about McPherson and how it's not McPherson. So she goes over to McPherson's house, finds out that Clayface was there with all splattered clay all over the place, which obviously he's not dead. I think there's something else going on here where he's going to reform, because we are getting a Clayface solo film set in the DCU. So Clayface isn't gone for good. There's no way you're going to get rid of one of Batman's villain in Creature Commandos without him appearing again. So he's going to come back in some way. So I'm kind of hoping in season 2 of this series, or possibly in this Clayface movie, we'll kind of get a recap of how he formed himself again and how he's still alive. Because he got fried by Frankenstein, got splattered all over the place, but there's no way he's dead. There's no way. So I feel like also Amanda Waller might have just picked up the pieces of his clay and shipped him off to prison, knowing he was still alive, and let him go back intact. But we'll see in the future. I mean, there's a movie coming, so there's no way he's dead. And I like how they set up that they think that Cersei was still the one that was playing them the entire time. But by the end, Bride's the one that puts it all together. But before we get to that part of the Bride figuring everything out, we have to talk about what happened when Nina tried to kill the princess. Which, I do like how they set up that Weasel was the one that went to try to stop Nina. The one creature that can't swim, we learned that from the Suicide Squad movie where he drowned originally, that the Weasel can't swim. But he went in anyways because the princess reminded him of the girl he once knew. Which I do like that. It shows that Weasel does remember things. He does remember people that took care of him. So the princess is someone that reminds him of that little girl that was killed in the fire. And it shows Weasel having a heart too. He's not a complete monster. He was innocent as well, who was thrown in this prison because they thought he was killing these children. So it really shows how some of these people are just misunderstood. They haven't really done anything terribly wrong. They were just seen as this monster and got thrown in jail. I thought it was interesting that Dr. Phosphorus saved Weasel too. Didn't even try to like stop him. I feel like he was probably going to kill him at that moment too until Weasel bit him and then burned his whole lip, because it showed Weasel protecting the princess. Dr. Phosphorus wanted to kill him before, so it's just both of them kind of not liking each other, even though it looks like they're both going to be on the same team in the end. And then the princess ends up being the one to kill Nina, which she stabs her multiple times. I was not expecting Nina to die this episode. It was like a really big shocker because that innocent heart of the team was taken away. And this is where Waller just comes in and was like, yeah, we made a mistake. Like, yeah, you made a mistake. You waited too long to realize that. Now Nina is dead. You've lost 2 people this season with G.I. Robot and Nina. But realistically, they only lost Nina because G.I. Robot came freaking back at the end of the episode, which I'm glad for. I was hoping he wasn't dead, but I really did not want to lose Nina. She's, again, the heart of the team. She was like the nice person, the one that felt like more human, the one that felt like you could really connect to, and the one that had a heart. But now it feels like that's going to be transferred onto the bride, because the bride realized exactly what was going on. The bride realized that Cersei was telling the truth about everything because she saw Clayface in that footage, giving us that confirmation that Clayface was there. Even though it was pretty obvious just by the leg in his arm, I don't think it could have been anyone else, but they definitely set that up. Realizing the princess set up Rick Flag to fall in love with her because she knew that Rick Flag would fall for this beautiful girl. The princess first suggested killing Cersei right off the bat to cover up everything, that way no one would suspect her, and then sending one of the knights to watch them at Bellerive. And I like the big piece of information about how the bride was the one that figured out that Clayface was sent to kill McPherson after McPherson already told them the truth, all in order to make them doubt that the real McPherson was the one telling them the truth. Because it makes sense. You put Clayface there, he's a shapeshifter, you're going to think that he was the one really in Bellerive the entire time, and it wasn't the real Dr. McPherson. But I love how the bride, the only reason she's killing the princess isn't because of this plot to destroy the world, not for McPherson, not for anything else. It's because she killed Nina, the only friend she had and the only person to show any of them any kind of kindness. So I really like how this shows where Bride's coming from. She doesn't care about the other stuff. She cares about her friend. After this season, I think the bride has definitely kind of grown a heart, where she was more cold before, but after meeting Nina and getting shown that kindness and Nina befriending her, that she slowly started to become someone who had a heart. And that showed her how to become more human as well in a way, and I do really like how they set that up. Because I feel like that's what's going to lead into the second season, with the bride being now the leader of the Creature Commandos, where she's going to be the one to kind of be more caring in a way, while also still being a badass, where she might still try to watch out for the team rather than kind of doing things on her own. And it's going to be a bigger character moment for her as she grows into this leadership role. Because we even see the bride crying for her friend at the end after she takes out the princess because she lost someone she actually cares about. And I do love how, even though this isn't the end for the Creature Commandos, they are setting up the next season. With having her go back, they have a new division in the Bellerive now for their team, getting their own little section with new people on the team. Who at first I thought was She-Back, just based on like the different Batman villains we've gotten so far. However, it's actually Nosferatu, who was announced from James Gunn going over the final episode in an interview, where she's a vampire that's actually a Superboy villain from the early comics. So, because she's a monster, it does make sense that they're throwing her into the Creature Commandos, who we did see a couple episodes ago, where she was part of taking Nina's lunch. So I feel like she's going to get treated a little poorly at the start, just because Bride won't like her at all, but eventually they'll probably become friends. And then we also got G.I. Robot coming back, so they piece him back together in a bigger robot design, so he's going to be more of a threat now. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do with him. So I'm assuming whatever the next mission will be, it'll be less of a stealth mission and more of a guns blazing type of mission with this giant robot that's ready to fight. Then we got King Shark back. We saw him in the Suicide Squad movie, and he's kind of more of this dumb idiot that we saw in that movie, so he's back. And I guess because they can't have the Suicide Squad after the Suicide Squad and Peacemaker, now the Creature Commandos will be that team. Eventually, I'm sure the Suicide Squad will come back in some way, but at the moment, the Creature Commandos will be taking that spot, and King Shark's been placed on that team. So I'm interested in seeing how King Shark's going to be playing a role into it. Obviously, we're going to see more of that wanting to eat nom-noms, so it's gonna be fun to see him again, and I'm curious to see how they're gonna tie him in, if we're gonna see his backstory to how he got thrown in jail and how he became part of the Suicide Squad and the Creature Commandos. And I'm interested in learning more about him as well, because we only got so much during the movie. Now we have a mummy-looking character that was confirmed by James Gunn during an interview that this is Callus, another mummy that's been on the Creature Commandos team before. At first I thought it was Aten, another character that's been on the team, but it's Callus. So, because the Creature Commandos have had 2 mummies before, I wonder if we'll see both of them eventually, or if it's just going to be one. And I like that they sub season 2. It's cool. You know, they added a couple new members, and they're setting up what's to come. And then, of course, we still have Weasel and Dr. Phosphorus on the team. So we'll see what happens in the next season. I'm curious to see what kind of threat they're going to go against this time, and how it's going to tie into the live action movies, because they did set up more of the broader DCU in this when it came to just showing us different countries, different monsters, different characters. So just slowly setting up what's to come in the DCU and how many other characters are going to be around. Plus, because this is an animated series, I'm kind of hoping we get it a little bit sooner rather than waiting years to get a second season, because that tends to happen with animated series. We'll get them sooner than the live action stuff. So I'm excited to see what happens next. And with Frankenstein at the very end post-credit scene, they're setting him coming back as well, still going after the bride, which I said before, I kind of hope he gets more of a character arc where he's not this such love obsessed, and you know, maybe he does something proper for the bride, which makes the bride recognize him, but in more of a platonic way rather than a love way, so they don't try to constantly kill each other and then come to like maybe an agreement or some sort. And I just want to see them interact more rather than just shooting. But we'll see what's to come. I really liked how the DCU started off, and I'm really excited for the other projects, because this was something weird, it felt comic booky, and it just made me excited for the direction they're going with this universe. But let me know, what did you think of Creature Commandos Season 1? What were some of your favorite moments? What did you think of Nina's death and the new team? We'll talk about it in the comments, and if you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe button, helps the channel a lot, and you get to stay up to date with all my Marvel and DC breakdowns. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you next time when it's time to watch the next season of Harley Quinn and Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man.